All right. Good morning, everyone. Happy Valentine's Day. Welcome to our event. I'm Sheila Stimson, event manager here at Tech Manitoba. Thank you for joining us for Tech Mashup, Life in the Fast Lane, Moving at the Speed of Trust. In the spirit of reconciliation, I'd like to acknowledge that we are gathered on the ancestral lands of Treaty 1 territory. This is the original lands of the Anishinaabe Cree, Oji Cree, Dakota, and Dene peoples, and the homeland of the Red River Métis Nation. Tech Manitoba continually seeks to cultivate better relationships with Indigenous communities. Our mission is to serve our members and assist in growing the tech community. We are grateful to the member organizations that support this community through participation, mentorship, and financial support. Thank you today to our Tech Mashup sponsor, DXC Technology. Today we're joined by Sheila Harris and Sandy Foster from Capstone Ridge Group. Sheila Harris is a senior digital transformation consultant, certified in business process reengineering, business architecture, project management, and change management. She has over 25 years of experience in business transformation, working on numerous industries over the span of her career. She began her IT career as a software developer, graduating from Red River Polytech's Computer Analyst Programmer Diploma program. Sheila is also an accomplished instructor, thought leader, speaker, mentor, blockchain educator, and most recently, editor to a local author. Sandy Foster, managing partner of Capstone Ridge Group, which is a management and IT services firm that provides digital transformation consulting in the Canadian mid-market public and private sectors. She's also an angel investor, providing financial and advisory support to startups. Sandy contributes to the community with over 20 years of experience as a board member and providing advisory services to not-for-profit boards, including Tech Manitoba. Please help me welcome Sheila and Sandy.
Hey, Shailene, thanks so much for the introduction. Hi, everybody. Nice to see some familiar faces, even if you are only this big. Sheila and I would like to share our views about, and views of experts, not just ours. We're definitely going to use some expert opinions of the why, the what, and the how of moving at the speed of trust so that we can all live in the fast lane that we live in. And basically, I'm going to start by talking about why it's important at Capstone Ridge Group and how we use it and leverage it to help us run our organization. So Sheila, I'm assuming you're going to share the lovely content.
Mm-hmm.
Be nice not to see myself.
How's that, Sandy? Can you see it?
I can see it. Can everybody else? Thumbs up. Yeah, I see some thumbs. I think it's working, Sheila.
Okay.
So let's move forward to our agenda. So we're going to start off with a little bit of, as I said, the why and why it's important to Capstone. Sheila will talk about some little dimensions and waves, and then highlight some behaviors that can help build trust and give you some tips and pointers, and then we'll move to a Q&A. So core values are how Capstone actually embraces trust. And our core values are really designed to inspire behavior and decision-making and set a tone for how we run our consulting business. And we do have 6 core values in total, of which moving at the speed of trust is certainly a foundational element. And we often call this kind of a foundational element of our enterprise operating system. And it really does influence how all our values influence everything that we do, from how we hire people, how we provide people care, how we work with our clients, how we work with our partners. And so speed of trust is at the top of the list. And briefly, some of the other ones are adding value, always add value, think outside the box, do what is right, team first always, and work fearlessly and live passionately. Some of us love the number 6. So you can move on. So move at the speed of trust. When we built our core values have evolved over the past 10 years, and We had 5 in the beginning, and then we had a bunch of other ideas as our leadership team got together, and then we smushed them around and landed on the final 6. But when we think of the speed of trust, we weren't necessarily looking at some of the expert opinions and pulling from there. We were saying we always need to strive to earn trust with our clients and our people, our team members. We need to be listening. Part of building trust is not just speaking, it is listening. And then when we speak, ideally we're speaking with candor. We're speaking clearly and completely, and trying to be as open and honest as possible. And certainly working in a world where we do management consulting and IT consulting, we always have a very wide range of stakeholders with very diverse backgrounds, and some very brilliant people, both on our team and in our client base. But all of us need to be wary of balancing. I think everybody knows the EQ, emotional quotient, and intellectual quotient, having a balance between the two. And certainly what we have found over the years is that you really cannot move fast unless you build trust first. You can move fast and get bad results. Sorry, you can move fast, but you'll typically get bad results if those stakeholders that are on your project team are not working together with a trusting foundation, and that the stakeholders that are impacted by how the project, whatever the project results are, whether it's a new business model, new processes, or new systems, those stakeholders are impacted by the change, clearly need to also we need to spend time building trust so that our outcomes can be achieved. You can move on, Sheila. So where did this come from? We were inspired by Stephen Covey and his Move at the Speed of Trust, the book that he recently wrote called The Speed of Trust. And his line is that progress moves at the speed of trust. In other words, all changes that we're trying to bring about to make things better and improve things, you really are gated by the level of trust that we've built in how all the stakeholders are interacting. And his line says, you can ignore the principles that govern trust, but they will not ignore you. And some of you may remember, so it was one of the books I read and started following many, many years back, long before some of you were probably born, was the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. So Mr. Covey has had a lot of pearls of wisdom that I think can benefit many people of all walks of life, whether it's in your business interactions, your family interactions, your community, your city, or the community as a whole. You can move forward. So why do we care at Capstone, and why do people like Stephen think it's very, very important, a part of how we all work together? I mean, trust really means confidence. It's when we can trust people, we're going to have confidence in their integrity and their abilities. Years ago, I used to always give everybody the book when they joined Capstone. It was called The Trusted Advisor, and it really talked about how consultants, and in our business especially, and many of you are acted in a consultative capacity to a lot of your clients or others in your organization. Your trust comes from your credibility, your responsibility, your integrity, and it gets reduced with too much of a self-orientation. So he had this trust equation kind of confidence, and really building. If you don't have trust, they'll end up being suspicion. And in a high trust relationship, you can make mistakes, right? You can actually say the wrong things, or have people misunderstand you, but you're still going to be able to move forward, or maybe make up for some of the boo-boos you may have said or done. And in a low trust relationship, you have the opposite. People will still often misinterpret what you're saying. They're filtering because they just don't trust where you're coming from. And when you develop high trust relationships with your business and your project stakeholders, as we said, we believe you can move rapidly, you can move quickly, and get better business and project outcomes. So that's kind of the why, both from a Capstone point of view and from some of the experts. I'll pass the baton to Sheila.
Thank you, Sandy. So again, a lot of the content in this presentation is based on the book Moving at the Speed of Trust. It's a really great book. Highly recommend it. It's very consumable. And it's sort of what I like about it is it puts some structure around this nebulous concept of trust, because I think we all instinctively understand when we trust someone and when we don't. But the reality is there's actually an infrastructure to trust, and there's behaviors, and there's kind of a science behind it, which is interesting to me. So according to the book, there's two dimensions of trust. I actually think there's a third, which, again, most of the content's based on the book, but some of it is my own learnings and understanding. So according to Covey, the two dimensions of trust are character and competence. So good character is required for trust under any circumstances, but competence, of course, is situational, right? Depending on your role, you may be expected to be competent in certain skill sets and not in others. So Simon Sinek, who's this guy that writes a bunch of books on leadership and worked in business and everything. Trust has two dimensions: competency and integrity. We will forgive mistakes of competence. Mistakes of integrity are harder to overcome. That's important to remember, because, as you know, we might make missteps or mistakes because we're humans, right? If anyone's expecting humans to not make mistakes, that's not really realistic, right? So where we can't make mistakes is with our character, their good character. So those are the two dimensions of trust. So the next sort of component of the trust infrastructure is the 5 waves of trust. So the 5 waves of trust, and sort of, going from, inner to outer, is self-trust, relationship trust, organizational trust, market trust, and societal trust. So this presentation, I'll talk about self-trust, relationship trust quite a bit, and just sort of briefly touch on organizational, market, and societal trust. So self-trust, of course, is how much we trust ourselves, and there is 4 cores to it: integrity, intent, capabilities, and results. And all of these things affect our ability to achieve the goals that we set for ourselves, to do what we say we're going to do in terms of keeping our commitments, like walking the walk, and inspiring trust in others. So the reality is, if you don't trust yourself, it's clear to other people and they won't trust you either. So it's really important that we develop self-trust. So Ralph Waldo Emerson, who's this great US statesman, he said, self-trust is the first secret of success. And I think it's pretty clear, when people trust themselves and they're confident, that comes across. Of course, sometimes we do have to fake it till we make it. But even if you're faking it till you make it, it still means that you trust yourself to develop to that point that you're, faking it, right? So the first core of integrity, according to C.S. Lewis, who's an author, integrity is doing the right thing even when no one is watching. So one little integrity exercise that I think is interesting is there's this shopping cart thing where, you can tell a lot about a person apparently about whether or not they return their shopping cart in the parking lot, right? So that's the kind of thing I'm talking about. Even when no one's watching, or you don't get credit for it, or it's not, a check marks on some list that you did this thing, we still have to exercise our integrity. So with integrity, we talk about congruence, meaning that our values are aligning with our actions. So we're doing what we believe internally to be the right thing to do, and not working off some agenda that doesn't align with our values. Humility, which should be, being more concerned about what's right versus being right, or getting credit. More concerned about acting on good ideas versus, having the ideas. Of course, courage. It takes courage to be honest. It takes courage to, do the right thing in difficult situations. But courage includes actions and information, because sometimes we have to have difficult conversations, and that requires courage as well. So sometimes even just talking, requires strength, but it's an important part of integrity. Openness, of course, is being available for new ideas, and avoiding having a closed mindset. The next core is intent. So Jim Carrey, he's a very famous actor. Intention is everything. Nothing happens on this planet without it. Not one single thing has ever been accomplished without intention. So it is important that we are intentional about our actions, our behaviors, the things that we say and do. So our intent is based on motives. So our motive is, why we do the things that we do. And when it comes to motives, if you genuinely care about what you're doing and the results that you want, that's going to inspire the greatest trust in the people around you that are relying on you to get those results, or working with you to get those results. The agenda, which grows out of motive, is wanting what's best for everybody. That will get your greatest trust, is actually really wanting win-win-win for everybody, and not just for yourself or for, one party in the arrangement. The agenda, your motive and agenda, of course, leads to behavior, and this is a manifestation of your motive and agenda. And of course, we want to act in the best interests of others. This will create credibility for you. So, Don't be selfish in your approach to things, and think about, how everybody wins. The third core is capabilities. So Anil Shinha, he's this actually very decorated police officer in India, and works with governments and things like that. He says the best possible preparation of success is to empower yourself with trust and self capabilities. So our capabilities are a few different things. It's our talents and skills. So whatever the means, the methods we use to produce our results. Talents and skills also require continuous improvement and professional development. So there's a number of different avenues you can take to do that. Also, capabilities is knowledge and experience. So this is our hands-on, real-world stuff that we have done, conversations we've had, things that we've accomplished that build on our skill set, and of course, also the practical understanding of a subject and knowledge domain. Another capability, which is an important one, is attitudes and style. So we maybe don't think about capabilities as being attitude and style, but in my view and in his view, it is. So our attitude is our emotions, beliefs, and behaviors, and how we conduct ourselves when we're planning our work and doing tasks and communicating. So I think attitude and style is really important. So recently, one of my clients told my business development guy that I was the best consulting experience that he's ever had. He was happiest, working with me over any other consultant he'd ever worked with. So of course, I went to him and I asked him, what's the secret sauce here? Like, what are you so happy about that you're reporting back, to my company that, I'm your favorite consultant ever? And he told me, he said, I've worked with consultants that are technically as brilliant as you are. But they tended to have an attitude problem and be snarky and condescending. And that really, really surprised me, because for me, it's extremely important when I'm working with my client that, my attitude reflects the fact that I'm here to help. I'm not here to judge you or, judge you on how you got into this position where you need to bring in, a digital transformation team. Um, so just think about that. So because of my attitude and the style that I approach my work, that's definitely, in my client's view, a capability that I have, to come across that way, to work that way. Something to think about. The last components of the core of self trust is results. So Arnold Schwarzenegger, obviously very accomplished dude, world class bodybuilder, a politician, and seems like a good guy. If you don't find time, if you don't do the work, you don't get the results, and we all know this is true. So something to think about when we're thinking about results is, what are the results that we're getting and how are we getting those results? One of the important things about trust and results is that we have to honestly communicate results so that everyone's aware of what the actual result is. So this includes, of course, negative outcomes and results. I know it can get a little sketchy and scary sometimes when we have to give, a bad message about something that didn't work out, some project we're working on where, we've hit a roadblock, something's gone sideways. But if you want to build trust with your stakeholders, it's extremely important that you're honest with them, particularly about negative outcomes. So the next thing we're going to talk about is relationship trust. So this is the next wave of trust. There's, according to the book, there's 13 behaviors that we can actually um, use or exhibit that will build trust with our stakeholders. And we'll go through all of these. This is just the list. The behaviors are kind of broken down into two sets, like we talked about earlier on, character and capabilities. So with the 13 behaviors, there's 5 of them that are considered character-based, 5 that are considered competence-based, and then 3 that are an overlap of the two, or a blending of the two. And for the purposes of this presentation, I've included an additional 2 behaviors that I think are important, stuff that I've learned in my career. So Mahatma Gandhi, your character must be above suspicion and you must be truthful and self-controlled. So the 13 behaviors, and we'll go through them in detail: talking straight, demonstrating respect, creating transparency, righting wrongs, and showing loyalty. The competence-based behaviors deliver results, get better, confront reality, clarify expectations, and practice accountability. So if you want to be successful, don't seek success, seek competence, empowerment, doing nothing short of the best that you can do, with the idea being that that's what will get you your success. That's what you focus on. So for me, I think about it more as, when I think about success, I think about my skill set and my ability to actually affect changes in organizations. I don't think about, the trappings of wealth or anything along those lines. For me, it's about how do I exercise my skills and capabilities. So these are the character and competence-based behaviors. So listening, keeping commitments, and extending trust. So these are a blending of the two. So trust is equal parts character and competence. You can look at any leadership failure, and it's always a failure of one or the other. I think that's a fair point. So the two behaviors that I think are important that are not in the book, but this is what I've learned, is connection-based behaviors is what I call them. So there's John C. Maxwell, who's also a guy that does a lot of speaking and writing about leadership. 3 qualities a leader must exemplify to build trust: competence, connection, and character. So for me, the connection-based behaviors that I've discovered as being, a factor for success in my engagements with my clients and in my engagements with, just about everybody in my life is to be encouraging and to demonstrate empathy. So we'll talk about those as well. In addition, you won't find these ones in the book, but they're important to me. So let's get on to our character-based behaviors, talking straight. One of the things that I do want to sort of preface is this: when we think about these behaviors, the focus that I like to think about is counterfeit behaviors. We know instinctively that we should talk straight and be honest, but sometimes we find workarounds to that, right? We find easier things to do than to do that difficult thing. So I think everyone gets a lot out of this presentation when, as I go through the behaviors, if you think about times when you may have exhibited the counterfeit behaviors and maybe how you would like to do that differently in the future. So, of course, talking straight is to be honest, be open, be bold, even be frank, and to not exhibit the counterfeit behaviors, which are really easy to fall into because it's easier, it's less scary than telling the truth and being very upfront. So, beating around the bush or withholding information, or my favorite, technically telling the truth but leaving a false impression, right? So I think there's a lot of ways that we do this because it's easier sometimes than just being totally frank about what's going on. The second one is about demonstrating respect. So showing respect and kindness and civility. The counterfeit behaviors that we see are like fake respect and concern. So like when you're being two-faced, you're, maybe showing someone respect in person, but then talking about them behind their back, that kind of thing. The other one that I think is a big one is showing respect and concern for some, like as in those people that can benefit you or people higher up on the org chart maybe, but not for everybody, as in those people that can't. One of my success factors, and I've had people tell me this multiple times, is, Sheila, what I really like about you is that, you will talk to just anyone. And I'm like, absolutely. Why wouldn't I talk to anyone? Like there's so much value we can all learn from each other, right? So it is my gold standard to absolutely show respect and concern for absolutely everybody that I interact with, and that's been very positive for me overall in my career and my life. Number 3 is create transparency. So being genuine, honest, openness, and being authentic. So I quite like this little cartoon here. Let's convince the consumers that we're authentic and transparent. I think that authentic may be a little bit overused as of late. It seems to be a very popular word, but I do think it's important that we are authentic and we create that transparency and not hide, cover, and obscure. No hidden agendas, no pretending and trying to put out an impression of something that's not real. So when I started off my career as a software developer 25 years ago, I was one of 2 women in a 30-person department, and I tried really hard to fit in, and in doing so, I hid a lot of who I am and my beliefs and even the way that I dressed. I went to work wearing jeans and t-shirts and runners, which I'm not a runner's girl. I'm not a jeans and t-shirts girl. I just did what I could to sort of hide my real identity, kind of being a girly girl, so I could fit in. But I'll tell you, as I've grown in my career, I've gotten a lot more transparent about who I am, where I'm coming from, and I don't hide for anybody anymore. And I feel like my clients appreciate my level of authenticity, that I am exactly how I, appear to be. Righting wrongs is extremely important. We're all going to make mistakes, right, guys? Like people are human. We're all going to mess up. That's a thing. But rather than, trying to justify our mistakes or, blaming others, really hate the blame game. are covering it up. I think the best thing that we can do to build trust is, I made a misstep here. I made a mistake. I made a bad judgment call. Here's what I'm going to do to fix it. Right. That will get you so much more respect than trying to pretend like you don't make mistakes or trying to never take responsibility for your mistakes. That's a bad way to go. So yes, I like this one. Admit it, we're lost, but the important thing to do is to remain focused on whose fault it is. Yeah, been there. Number 5 is show loyalty. So acknowledging the contributions of others and demonstrating recognition and gratitude for people on your team, people you work with, your stakeholders. So some counterfeit behaviors around that: appearing to give credit to someone when present, but downplaying it when not. So, not I guess trying to make yourself look good at the expense of someone else. And again, this whole idea of, two-facedness comes up. So sweet talking people to their face and bad mouthing them behind. And then, of course, the most interesting man in the world. I don't always submit good ideas at work meetings, but when I do, someone else gets the credit. Yeah. Our confidence-based beliefs now. So the next 5 are going to be competence-based behaviors. Pardon me. Deliver results is number 1. Billy Cox is a musician. He said, "Our beliefs determine our actions, and it is only our consistent actions that will produce results." So we're talking about actually delivering results as opposed to talking a good game and not really delivering. So at some point, we have to focus on what it is we're actually delivering, what our outputs are, right? Um, I have seen this before with some people that I've worked with there, where they're really into the methodology, the steps that we take, and really don't focus on what the outcomes are, which I think is really interesting. So I think there's safety and security and in relying on a methodology and in affecting the methodology, but you can't lose sight of the results. Like, what are the actual outcomes? The other thing where we have to be cognizant of results, where you get your best trust, is when you're consistent. So delivering inconsistently is going to set you back in terms of your stakeholders, trusting you. So it's very important that we're consistent with delivering our results. Number 7 is get better. So again, this is all about professional development, continuous improvement, learning, growing, changing. The important thing is that we don't improve things if we don't recognize that there's room for improvement, right? So we need to be honest about where we can make our improvements. That's really important. So some counterfeit behaviors, some people are always like eternally learning, but they don't actually ever apply that knowledge to anything. So that's not a true continuous improvement. It's a partial. It's partway there, but it's not all the way there. The other thing that we can do, and we tend to do, because again it's easier, is this, whatever we need to do, we force fit it into what we're good at, right? So we don't ever get out of our comfort zone. We're like, yeah, I'm really good with this one modeling technique, and I'm going to use that, for everything, even if it's not a good fit, right? Rather than go out and learn new modeling techniques and then start applying them, right? So continuous improvement, important concept for building trust. Confronting reality. So, having the difficult conversations, demonstrating the courage, the bravery to have those difficult conversations, and confronting reality, being realistic. So this is extremely important, and I will tell you this: this is one thing where if you're dealing with very senior stakeholders, executive level, this is extremely important to them. It's very important that you give them a clear picture, and it could be scary sometimes, like I said, but this is where you're going to get that trusted relationship with your executives. So some counterfeit behaviors is like basically evading issues, painting rosy pictures of ugly truths, and that's not what your executives are looking for in you. Clarifying expectations. This is huge, huge, huge in our world, in our business world, in our lives. So openly communicating and verifying the understanding of all parties that are involved in the arrangement, right? Be clear who's responsible, who's accountable. So counterfeit behaviors there, or ways we might go offside with that, is pretending to clarify but not doing enough to pin down specifics. So just letting the conversation remain vague when you know that there's things you should be pinning down, but you're, sort of avoiding doing that. The other thing is situational expectations, right? So shifting based on memories, interpretations, whatever's convenient. Well, as I recall it, we agreed to this. Well, the way around that is like put it in writing, right? And get agreement after the fact that this is what we talked about. So number 10, practice accountability. This is still on the competence-based behaviors. Hold ourselves accountable and hold others accountable. And of course, clarification on who's accountable for what. Counterfeit behaviors, obscuring who's accountable, passing the buck, again, playing some blame game. It's not my fault. I didn't do it. I, did everything I could, but this person dropped the ball. I think I actually talked to this customer service agent last week. Your shipment was delivered to the wrong address, so technically it's your fault for choosing not to live there. Love it. The 3 behaviors that are blended behaviors of character and competence is listening first. So Stephen R. Covey says this: most people do not listen with the intent to understand. Most people listen with the intent to reply. And this is true, and all of us are guilty of this at some point. At some point in our lives, we find ourselves in a conversation where in our head we're trying to figure out how we're going to respond to what the person is telling us rather than actually listening. So active listening is this idea that comes up, quite a bit. And it's actually really, really important. And you have to be mindful. It's one of these things where, you have to really focus on it, I found. So some counterfeit behaviors is, of course, the smiling and nodding, pretending to listen, but you're really not. Like we talked about, formulating replies instead of listening, and not paying attention to body language and social cues. So, of course, we all know that body language is extremely important. It's a huge percentage of communication, and we need to pay attention to those things. So, as in a lot of concepts, listening is extremely important. Keeping our commitments. I really, really like this picture here. The chicken was involved, the pig was committed. I quite appreciate this one. So with our commitments, we have to balance out our integrity, our performance, courage, and humility. So some of the counterfeit behaviors here is making vague commitments, right? Where we don't actually, like me, like I'll go to the gym more often. Like, what does that mean? I, need to get down to the specifics of how many days a week and how long I will be there and how many exercises I will do while I'm there. The other thing we do is we just don't make commitments because that's easiest, right? We just avoid making commitments altogether. So extending trust is the 13th one from the book, the last one. Confucius says, there's one word which may serve as a rule of practice for all one's life: reciprocity. So when we're extending trust, essentially what we're doing is demonstrating this fundamental belief that most people are capable of being trusted, want to be trusted, and will do well when trusted. So this is an important concept. You have to give to get, right? So some of the counterfeit behaviors here is extending false trust. Essentially, we give people responsibility, but we don't give them the right resources or the authority to actually accomplish a task. So we're not really trusting them with resources or authority, right? Even though we say, you're responsible for getting this done. And then, of course, acting like we trust someone when we really don't. So one of the things I want to say about this and a lot of the other characters or behaviors that we talked about is when it comes to bad actors, everything goes out the window. So bad actors are known entities that are actively, working against their stated goals or the stated goals of the group or the organization or the project. So when you know that you're dealing with a bad actor, and I'm sure we've all been in this situation, then you have to be very, very, very careful about the extent of trust that you give. But it's still in your best interest. So I guess what I'm saying is sometimes I do recommend false trust because that's the reality of the situation. So the 2 connection-based behaviors that I had mentioned earlier, the first one is to be encouraging. So that, is sharing your positive thoughts for effort with others and making sure that you're praising people for their efforts and results, right? And even if someone's just taking baby steps in the right direction, I think it's really important that we are encouraging. And of course, with reciprocity, being appreciative when others are encouraging to you and encouraging that behavior. Talking people up, communicating their good qualities to others. So one of the things that I frequently do on a client side is if when I have a really good experience with team members, I will send an email to their boss and let them know, how great this person is and how what a good experience that I'm having. So I always believe in passing along compliments as well. So if someone tells me something good about somebody, I'll say, hey, yeah, by the way, so and so noticed how great you are at this, right? Important that you are authentic when you're doing this. We're not making stuff up, right? But really just it's a small matter of just being mindful of the efforts of other people. And you don't have to necessarily limit yourself to words. You could always bring in coffee and donuts. People appreciate that. So the second connection-based behavior is to demonstrate empathy. Empathy, I think, is a really important concept that has bubbled up a lot in the pandemic. I don't think it's something we talked about very frequently before the pandemic in terms of from a business perspective, but I think that it's recognized in the pandemic. It's been recognized that everyone's got a lot going on. There's a lot going on, and when people are messy, right? And with the pandemic, I think it was just, for whatever reason, it's become easier to be able to recognize that people have their limitations, they have their challenges, they have their anxieties, their concerns, right? So empathy for me is important because when I work with clients, we're traditionally making very large changes in an organization, implementing new systems, new processes. It's very can be very, very anxiety inducing for the clients. People are like, how is this going to affect my job? Am I going to be able to use the new system? So on and so forth, right? And because of that, they offer up resistance to things. And my go-to, from a change management perspective is, when I see resistance in people, I immediately go try and put on my empathy hat and try and figure out, okay, what is this person going through, that this is the outcome of it, that they're this unhappy with a system change or things are going on. So I think empathy can be really helpful from a number of perspectives. But one of the important things, when we think about empathy, is to be aware of and challenge your biases. I think I actually do a presentation on biases as well, and I think that it's extremely important that we recognize our biases, otherwise they're going to get us in trouble. So those are the behaviors that are related to relationship trust. So now we're just going to briefly touch on organizational trust. Um, so there's this concept of low trust organizations and high trust organizations, and I have worked in both. One thing that's important when we think about organizations is that there can be pockets of low trust within a high trust organization, and vice versa. So you might be in a low trust organization, but you're leading a very high trust team because as a leader you've decided that that's what you want to do. So you might find high trust within the team and not so much dealing with people external to the team. But in the characteristics of a low trust organization, is number one, people are withholding, manipulating, hoarding, or distorting facts. So information is at a premium and it's difficult to get access to the right information. Getting credit's very important, so everyone's always jockeying for position in terms of, yeah, I did this, and taking credit for what the team does or what other people do. New ideas are resisted and stifled, so low trust organizations tend to not be open to new ideas. Mistakes are covered up or covered over. So you have these organizations where there is no allowance to fail, where you have to be 100% all the time, which isn't the reality of being a human being. Of course, in a low trust organization, lots of games, blame games, power games, reputation games, everything's a game. And no one's really focused on getting the work done. The other thing is there's many topics that are undiscussable. So things that you just outright can't say, questions you can't ask. That will, if you ask those questions, you will be branded as a, you know, not a not a good stakeholder. So those are the characteristics of low trust organizations. Conversely, in high trust organizations, people are candid and authentic. There's open sharing of information, and sharing of information is encouraged. People are granting and sharing credit. New ideas are welcome. Mistakes are tolerated as a way of learning. People are talking straight and confronting reality, right? That's an important one. And of course, there's a high degree of accountability. Again, can be pockets of this within organizations. Let's talk about market trust. This is the fourth wave of trust. Just briefly, but market trust is all about brand or reputation. We want to buy products and services from companies we trust. And of course, brands are based on people's perception. So if you have a trustworthy brand, that's a really good competitive advantage for the company. So this is one of the reasons why one of Capstone's core values is moving at the speed of trust. Trust is a really big concept for a business, right? We want to have the best reputation possible. We want to have our clients trust us with our skills and with our character. The last wave of trust is societal trust, which this was a new concept for me when I read the book. I hadn't thought about societal trust before, but trust is an integral part of the fabric of our society. and heavy costs are incurred by a closed, low trust society. So when I think about a low trust society, I think about North Korea, for instance. So there's not a lot of trust between the people in the government there and between individuals, and within the government. Like in my view, it's a very low trust society, but they're losing out on the benefits of being a high trust society. Some of the benefits are shared knowledge across industries and across, people, across, governments, different levels of government, medical breakthroughs, technological advantages, economic partnerships, and cultural exchanges. So I think there, I think you could do a whole, workshop on trusted societies, high trust, low trust, what it all means, but that's kind of the gist of it. So that's the fifth wave of trust. So in summary, just to wrap it all up, trust is essential to prosperity, joy, happiness, and professional success. It allows us to move ahead on projects and initiatives with greater speed and better outcomes. Overall, just better business benefits altogether. There's actually characteristics and behaviors we can learn to establish, grow, extend, and restore trust. So those specific behaviors, we can actually exhibit those, and always thinking about when we're shifting to a counterfeit behavior that doesn't benefit us. The speed of trust is impactful to business and projects and should not be underestimated. What I found as a change management practitioner is that sometimes businesses think that change management is kind of warm and fuzzy people stuff and it doesn't have value. And some people might think about this notion of trust in the same way. It's a warm and fuzzy people thing and it doesn't have value. I will tell you that it absolutely has value, and you can save costs on a project. You can move faster and overall get better results because of trust. For instance, if you go in to consult with the client and figure out, that they're asking you to fix something, if they're not forthcoming with you, if they don't trust you with, what's going wrong with what they're doing, you're not going to come up with a good solution, right? So it is actually really important. So, just as a final quote, because I like quotes, trust takes years to build, seconds to break, and forever to repair. I think we all instinctively know that's true. So that's all I had for this slideshow. I'm going to go ahead, I guess, and stop sharing the screen, and we'll, I think, go to questions.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Sandy and Sheila. That was a great presentation. I love how you call them counterfeit behaviors. I just think that's such a nice way of framing bad habits or different personality traits that some of us may lean into a little too much. We have quite a few questions here. If anybody else has more, feel free to just pop them into the Q&A tab. And then you can upvote your favorite ones too. So I'll start with this one. Have you found that people are more or less open to change since the pandemic? It seems like everything has changed and nobody wants any more additional changes.
Do you want to take that one? I'll start. Sheila,
Okay.
type in. I think a lot of it ties back to is it a high trust or low trust organization? If it's a low trust organization, there's a concept called change saturation. There are folks that are just they're done with change too much. We need to slow down. Can't we just pause for a bit? I think high trust organizations, if you've got the momentum and change, and you got through the pandemic, and change is just become we're going to do that. That's what we do to succeed. So my view is it's really are you a high trust or low trust organization?
Absolutely. I think that ties kind of nicely into one of our next questions. When working in a low trust organization, so not ideal, and leading a change initiative, what advice would you offer to building trust with staff who don't believe in the changes you're implementing?
Yeah. So for me, I'm not above saying I know this isn't how this normally works. I know that there's been history where you've had some unpleasantness, with changes, but this time it's going to be different, and that's my commitment to you. So I think sometimes acknowledging that there's history or acknowledging that there's barriers can be really, really helpful, because then people know where you're coming from, and they understand that you're coming from a place of understanding, you know, that you're not just walking into something that you have no idea about, right? Like you're there already. You're like, yeah, I get it. I know where you're at. I know where you've been, but we're gonna do this different thing now, and it's gonna be okay. And I'm gonna, you know, help you through this, right? And making the commitment and specifically saying, I will hold myself accountable for getting you through this, right?
And I would add to that, it would also involve lots of listening about what and learning about what has gone wrong in the past, and soliciting advice from and building the change network and change leaders to help it happen differently this time.
Yeah, it sounds like really leading into all those behaviors. So listening, empathy, accountability, just to really drive up the points that you're making. The next question, which of the 13 behaviors do you find the hardest to act on?
So we probably have different answers for this one, but for me personally, it's about accountability, and it's not so much my accountability, it's holding others accountable, especially people on my team that are underperforming. I sometimes struggle to, you know, like I'll kind of make excuses for them, if you know what I mean, in the interest of, you know, being compassionate or whatever, where sometimes I should really be like, this is unacceptable and we need to address this. So I'm pretty okay to have tough conversations on the business level to say, you know, this has all gone sideways and this is not good. But for me personally, when it comes to like an underperforming team member, I sometimes struggle with holding them accountable.
Yeah, I actually think sometimes confronting reality can be very difficult because we're not really measuring. We don't have a good handle. There's a lot of feelings versus facts, and it's just really uncomfortable. So depends on what's going on, but I think there are times where that one's hard. How do we actually talk straight? How do we actually look at facts and data versus just feelings and confront reality? And I think the other one next one would be sometimes righting wrongs. That's a hard one. That's not necessarily straightforward. Sometimes it could be very straightforward, but I think there are times where you've actually made some mistakes. How do you actually turn that around other than apologizing and let's keep moving?
Absolutely. Identifying all the next steps. The next question is kind of the opposite. If you work in a high trust organization, but you distrust a specific resource, should they just be avoided, or should that open discussion to be had either with them directly or as a group?
So I will say my bit on this, and then I'm hoping Sandy can jump in. But like being a consultant, I'm because I'm a guest in the environment when I come to work with a client. So I would never confront someone and be like, I just don't trust you. Like that's not an acceptable behavior. But as far as avoiding resources, if you rely on somebody that you think is a bad actor, I would just say, watch your six, right? Like protect yourself, paper trails, get stuff in writing, try not to have any one-on-one meetings with them, right? Like just, kind of act in a protective fashion. Now, like as an employee, if I didn't trust someone, would I confront them and say, I just don't trust you? Probably not. But I might go to my boss and say, well, I think, I don't have a lot of faith in this person's ability to meet their commitments. And I'm wondering, what is our escalation path, or is there any workaround, like a different resource I could work with? Like I might ask that question, but I don't think I'd confront the person individually. But I haven't actually been an employee for a long time, so I'm a little out of touch.
I would, we are consultants, so we always have to go in with a different mindset. But I guess among members of our team, if we have issues among ourselves, it's getting to the root of, well, what is the trust issue? What is is it credibility? Is it the lack of reliability? Is it you're not meeting your commitments? Is it that there's a lot of wrong and we have never righted it? Is it and trying to see if certainly in the leadership role, trying to understand how might we help this person increase their credibility, and maybe even confronting reality and saying, do you understand that people don't trust you? Because sometimes people don't understand why things aren't working well and why people don't want to work with them.
Absolutely. That's like that Taylor Swift song. It's me. I'm the problem. Me. That's what that reminded me of. And you just don't see it unless sometimes you need someone to tell you. So great advice. The slideshow is awesome. There's lots of really fun cartoons and quotes in there. Are you comfortable with us sharing it out with all the attendees after this event if we turn it
Yeah.
into a PDF? Yeah? Okay, perfect.
Absolutely. I do recommend people pick up the book though. Like it is quite good. So there's a level of detail, that you obviously can't go into in a slide deck, with this kind of information, but worth a read.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. I hope everybody took away lots of great notes, and this recording will also be up on our YouTube page so we can share it with everyone. Thank you, Sheila and Sandy, for joining us. Everything you said was so insightful and relevant. Real quick before we go, I want to talk about a couple of our upcoming events that we have. So our next big in-person event is our Innovators, The Future is Human. So that is going to be in person at the RBC Convention Center, Wednesday, March 22nd from 5 p.m. till 9:30 p.m. So it is a night of networking, a dinner, and a presentation. Cheryl Cran is a future of work expert, and she's the founder of Next Mapping. She'll be facilitating a conversation around leading change with a people first focus to automate the mundane so that we can elevate the humane. We do have a special promotion right now. So until Thursday, if you want to buy a table for 8, you will automatically get upgraded to VIP tickets. This is a promotion just for our members. It comes with complimentary parking, sparkling wine service, premium table location, priority check-in, and early access to the event. So a great opportunity. I know Elise will be popping that over in the chat. Tech Manitoba is also hosting our 6th virtual edition of Career Connections, which is bringing together industry who is hiring now or in the near future with diverse Manitoba tech talent. So March 23rd at noon is a post-secondary grad version, and then in early May, we'll be holding a similar version of the event with a different audience. This one is going to be job seekers who are tech newcomers with mid-level tech skills. The events are hosted on Remo, so very similar to this. Marie sends out a curated job seeker profiles. It enables recruiters to meet with potential candidates efficiently and cost effectively. If you are interested in meeting some of the new tech talent, feel free to connect with Marie. Her email is going to be put in the chat, along with a link to the webpage with more details. And then our next tech mashup is in a month. So Tuesday, March 14th, Leveraging Government Grants and Tax Incentives, a guide to the best opportunities. Jacqueline Hunter from Deloitte will give us an overview of government offerings, grants, incentives, and tax credits, including SR and ED. She will outline how much effort is required and what to expect. Always, our tech mashups are free to join, so book off that time on your lunch hour. That concludes all the formalities today. You'll now be transported back to your table, and the event will remain open till 1:15 for networking. Thanks for joining us.